Ehre-Lessien, Germany. Volkswagen's private proving ground, 20 kilometers of asphalt built for machines, not people. A prototype car waits at the edge of the straight, low, silver, and silent. A 26-year-old test engineer climbs in, checks the telemetry, and receives clearance. He accelerates past 200 miles per hour. At that speed, a car isn't driving anymore. It's flying a few centimeters above the surface, kept alive by balance and trust. Halfway through the run, one tire loses a fraction of pressure. Barely measurable, less than half a bar. At 200 miles per hour, that's enough. The sidewall shreds, the car lifts, spins, and explodes into motion. No fire, no explosion, just parts scattering down the track. Silence where an engine should be. When investigators reviewed the data, they found nothing wrong with the design, just a missed detail in pre-test inspection. One valve, one reading skipped. Volkswagen changed everything after that. Real-time pressure feeds, redundant tire checks, secondary engineers signing off every run. A new rule born in speed and silence. It wasn't a crash from failure, it was precision undone by a decimal. Florida, 2019. Night streets in Davie shimmer after rain. A Tesla Model S moves fast, too fast, down a 6-lane road. Autopilot off, speed over 110 miles per hour. The car swerves, hits a tree, and ignites in seconds. Lithium-ion batteries vent fire differently, not a burst, but a chain reaction. Cells overheat, rupture, and feed one another in a self-sustaining storm called thermal runaway. Firefighters arrive, douse the blaze, and watch it flare again. Once in transport, once in storage. The car reignites 3 times. The driver never escaped. Doors locked electronically, handles recessed. Inside, sensors still pulsed, sending crash data long after the cabin was gone. The NTSB later called it a containment failure, the kind of language used when chemistry wins over design. Electric cars rewrote crash response manuals that year. Departments learned lithium needs time, distance, and patience. You don't extinguish it, you wait for it to burn out. Gasoline ends with a spark. Electricity ends with exhaustion. Both remind the world that energy doesn't vanish, it only changes form. Paris, 1997. The tunnel beneath the Pont de l'Alma. Short, curved, polished concrete. A black Mercedes S280 enters at over 120 kilometers an hour, chased by flashbulbs. The driver, drunk. The rear passengers, unbelted. Seconds later, the car hits the 13th pillar. The impact folds steel like paper. Airbags deploy, but at that speed, restraint is physics, not hope. 3 die. 1 lives, the only one wearing a seatbelt. The world turns the scene into conspiracy, tragedy, obsession. Investigators strip it down to math. Speed, alcohol, no belts, center pillar collision. Every factor measurable, every mistake fatal. From that crash came Europe's mandatory seatbelt campaign, quiet reform born from public grief. In a tunnel under Paris, the modern era of safety reminders began. Not because of fame, but because even in luxury, laws of motion still apply. California, 1955. Evening light, Route 466. James Dean drives his Porsche 550 Spider towards Salinas. The road's open, the air clean, the car almost new. Ahead, a Ford sedan turns across the lane. There's no time to react. Impact speed, 85 miles per hour. The Porsche crumples. Dean dies instantly. The other driver survives, barely injured. The California Highway Patrol report calls it ordinary right-of-way failure. No mystery, no curse, no prophecy, just visibility and angle. The Spider sat too low for headlights to catch in time. Afterward, road authorities revised intersection markings and height visibility tests for sports cars. A small reform, born from celebrity death. Even fame couldn't bend geometry. Low cars vanish under light glare. It wasn't recklessness, it was alignment. Detroit, 2000s. Compact cars stalling mid-turn, losing steering, cutting power, no alarms, no airbags, just silence, then impact. Drivers die quietly, steering wheels locked, engines dead. For a decade, GM collects the reports. Internal memos flag the cause, a faulty ignition switch slipping out of run. The cost to fix it, 57 cents per car. The cost to ignore it, incalculable. By the time the recall comes, over 120 people are confirmed dead. Most victims never had time to brake. When the ignition turned off, airbags turned off too. Congress calls it a catastrophic concealment. The Justice Department fines GM $900 million. The CEO apologizes publicly. Families call it something else, murder by spreadsheet. The ignition switch becomes a symbol of modern industry's flaw. The math of negligence. A part too cheap to fail, but too inconvenient to admit. The company redesigns its process. Engineers recertify every safety-critical part. But trust once burned doesn't relight as easily as a dashboard bulb. Santa Clarita, California. A stretch of smooth asphalt framed by warehouses and palm trees. A red Porsche Carrera GT waits at the curb, idling low, exhaust note sharp and metallic. The driver, a skilled racer. The passenger, an actor known for loving what kills fast. They roll out slowly, then harder, 60, 80, 90 miles per hour. The curve ahead isn't sharp, but at that speed, slight becomes absolute. Tires 9 years old, compound stiff from age, heat cycles forgotten. Grip fails halfway through the bend. The rear slides, catches a curb, launches the car into a tree. The explosion isn't gasoline. It's carbon fiber disintegrating under impact, every strand releasing stored energy at once. Impact speed, 93 miles per hour. Both men die instantly. Investigators find no defect, no fault in steering, suspension, or design. Just speed, temperature, and physics doing their job. The Carrera GT wasn't a street car, it was a race car that happened to have a license plate. Its manual warned, "This vehicle requires highly skilled operation." It didn't lie. Then came a disaster, not of speed, but of safety itself. Japan, early 2000s. Takata Corporation supplies airbags worldwide. Honda, Toyota, BMW, Ford. Inside each inflator, ammonium nitrate, the same compound used in mining explosives. Cheaper, lighter, faster to ignite. Over time, humidity seeps in. Crystals form inside the canister. When the airbag deploys, it detonates instead of inflating. Metal fragments slice through cabins. Drivers bleed out with cars barely dented. 27 confirmed dead, hundreds injured. Some struck by shrapnel during fender benders, others while sitting parked. Investigations uncover hidden tests, inflators that exploded on benches, results buried in internal memos. Emails show executives knew the chemical was unstable, but pushed production to maintain supply chain confidence. By 2015, the recall becomes the largest in automotive history. 100 million airbags, 19 manufacturers, 40 countries. The company collapses under lawsuits and criminal charges. Ammonium nitrate inflators are banned, replaced by stable compounds. But the legacy remains. Millions of unreplaced cars still on the road, silent weapons behind plastic emblems, a safety device turned fragmentation bomb because profit once looked lighter on paper. Colorado, 2013. Pikes Peak, a mountain that eats ambition. 12 miles, 156 turns, no guardrails, air thinning with altitude. Electric prototypes had just begun to challenge gasoline up the hill. Instant torque, no power loss, zero delay. That summer, an experimental EV called E-Runner lined up for its first competitive run. Halfway up, telemetry showed rising battery temps, ignored to keep pace. Entering a tight left, brake pressure drops to zero. Regenerative systems fade, hydraulics boil. The car locks, slides, and vaults through a barrier into a ravine. Impact ruptures the battery shell. Cells vent violently, feeding one another in a chain of chemical fire. Rescue teams can't reach it for 40 minutes. By then, the pack is molten aluminum. No explosion, no survivors. The report cites thermal saturation and insufficient vent design. Translated, too much energy trapped in too little space. After E-Runner, every EV racer added thermal cutoffs, secondary coolers, and vent flues. Pikes Peak rewrote its safety manual for electric entries. The mountain didn't care what powered you. It only measured what failed first: brakes, batteries, or belief. America, 1970s. Gas prices high, compact cars the future. Ford launches the Pinto, small, light, cheap, but cost savings cut close to bone. Behind the rear axle sits the fuel tank, unshielded. Crash tests show that a 30-mile-per-hour rear impact can drive bolts into the tank, rupture it, and ignite vapors. Engineers propose an $11 plastic guard. Management rejects it. Internal memo: cost per death equals $200,000, cheaper to settle than recall. That calculation holds until 1978, when 3 teenage girls die in a 28-mile-per-hour rear-end collision. Their Pinto bursts into flame before rescue arrives. The case goes public. The memo surfaces. Headlines call it the $11 decision. Ford faces criminal homicide charges, the first ever for a car company. Jurors see crash test footage. Flames under seats, dummies engulfed in seconds. Verdict: guilty of reckless indifference. Payouts reach millions, but public trust costs more. Ford cancels the Pinto. Regulators overhaul fuel system safety, mandating puncture-resistant tanks and rear impact standards. One small car burned its name into law books, a reminder that spreadsheets don't feel heat. Germany, the Eifel Mountains, Nürburgring Nordschleife, 21 kilometers, 154 corners, elevation swings that make drivers weightless. The world calls it the Green Hell. The track has no forgiveness, only precision. Since the 1950s, it has claimed over 80 professional drivers and hundreds of amateurs. There is no single tragedy, only a continuum. In 1976, Niki Lauda's Ferrari snaps at Bergwerk Corner. Fuel ignites, the car burns in seconds. Racers stop mid-lap, pull him from the fire, hands and faces melting. Lauda survives, returns 6 weeks later, living proof of will against flame. But others never left. The ring stayed open because danger was its identity. Each decade adds safety barriers, asphalt runoff, better helmets. The death count barely slows. Modern track day tourists chase lap times in streetcars faster than old F1 machines. A mistake at 200 kilometers per hour ends the same way it always has: guardrail, spin, silence. The track teaches nothing except humility. It doesn't hate you, it just doesn't care if you come back. Tokyo, 2013. A Honda sedan crashes at low speed. Airbag deploys. Driver dies instantly. Metal shrapnel through neck. Another Takata inflator not yet replaced. By then, the recall was public. Letters mailed, warnings posted. She never saw one. It was the 4th fatality that month. Each time, the story repeats. Minor crash, massive wound. Regulators say the problem is aging components. Survivors call it a ticking minefield. Even today, thousands of used cars still carry the same inflators. Aging chemistry waiting for impact. Then China, 2019. Tianjia chemical plant in Jiangsu province. A truck unloads raw solvents beside storage tanks. At 2:48 p.m., one tank ruptures. The explosion levels factories for kilometers. Windows shatter 10 miles away. 78 dead, 600 injured. Cars melt in parking lots half a mile off-site. It wasn't a car accident. It was industrial fuel meeting combustion by negligence. The link is the same: storage, pressure, delay. When humans underestimate energy, it reminds them what explosive really means. Back to America, the Midwest interstates. A Chevrolet Malibu hits black ice at 2 a.m., spins sideways, strikes a light pole. Airbags fail to deploy. It's 2012, the GM ignition defect still unrecalled. One woman dies. The car's key was found turned to accessory. Electrical cutoff mid-spin. Exactly what engineers warned about a decade earlier. She never knew. No driver did. That single fault became symbolic. A part smaller than a pencil erasing entire families. The ignition slipped just enough to kill power, but not enough to show it. No steering, no brakes, no airbags, just silence. Investigators later found that her VIN was on the recall list. Notice mailed months after the crash. Her parents brought the key to the courtroom. It weighed less than 10 grams, but the jury said it carried the weight of 100 lives. GM called it an unfortunate sequence of events. The families called it what it was: a death by delay. Every crash is the same sentence written in different metal: speed, heat, and the moment we forget they're the same thing. Subscribe for more stories like this.